Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY sailboat refit weekend here aboard good old Athena. That's how I normally start out my videos, but for this one, that would be completely wrong. For one, today is not the weekend, it's Wednesday, and also, at least the beginning of this video is going to take place aboard Refleks and not Athena. A little later in this video, we'll head over to Athena, but for now, there is something I desperately need to fiddle with here aboard Refleks, and that's why I'm starting this video here. In case you're new to my channel, this is the 30-foot sailboat I live aboard with my Icelandic sheepdog Jökull while I'm busy fixing up my other sailboat, Athena. The two of us have been living aboard for almost 3 years now. Selling my house, getting rid of all of my stuff, and moving aboard Refleks is by far the best decision I have ever made. But a big part of what has made this a good experience has been the ability to stay warm even during the cold winters here in Denmark. My only heat source here aboard Refleks is my Refleks 66 diesel stove. This thing has been awesome. It's never given me any kind of problems, until now that is. And if you haven't guessed it already, the thing I so desperately need to fiddle with is the stove. Last night I noticed it was a little bit cold here inside the boat. I checked the Refleks stove and sure enough it wasn't on. I tried lighting it again, but I couldn't, and I checked the burn chamber and it didn't look like there was a lot of diesel coming in there, so there's something I need to clean or fix. In case you're not familiar with a Refleks stove, it is a dead simple contraption. On the other side of this bulkhead, there's a day tank mounted to the bulkhead around this level here. That supplies the stove with diesel through gravity. Then on the stove there is a small regulator that controls the flow of diesel into the burn chamber. And that is it. There's no electronics at all. It is, like I said, dead simple. This is the regulator I just mentioned, and as you can see there are no wires, no electronics of any kind like I said. The only thing you need to worry about in a day-to-day operation to control the stove is this knob that controls the amount of diesel that enters into the stove. This allows you to shut off the diesel flow into the regulator in case you need to service the regulator, and this is also a safety feature. This will shut off the diesel supply in the event of a fire. As far as this doohickey here, that is for cleaning and also for draining out any excess diesel in case the stove shuts off while the regulator is still on. There is only one way to access the burn chamber on the stove, and that is to remove this little cooktop here. It's quite a tight fit, but it does pull off like that. To get access to the bottom of the burn chamber, there is a little assembly down here that we need to remove. I don't know what this is called, but I do know what its purpose is. When the stove is on, this thing becomes super hot, and in the event that the stove gets blown out by a gust of wind, this will actually reignite the stove. I've seen that happen on many a gusty night. With this thing out of the way, we've now got access to the bottom of the burn chamber. As you can see, there is a bit of slag or dross down there. Removing the black stuff in the burn chamber, no matter what it's called, is a part of the routine maintenance of owning a Refleks stove. The process is simple. It is just a matter of poking around in there until you get it loose. A screwdriver seems to do an okay job of it, and that was actually the implement I was recommended to use by the manufacturer when I first purchased the stove. Now that the burn chamber is nice and clean, let's just make absolutely sure that diesel can also flow into the burn chamber, because some of that yucky black stuff can actually get stuck in the entrance into the burn chamber, and that's why we've got this little needle here. So you just push that back and forth a couple of times, but what I also like to do is just to take a little Q-tip, just push that in there. Look at that. With the stove nice and clean, let's just try and switch on the regulator to see how much diesel enters into the burn chamber. Okay, from my experience dealing with the Refleks stoves, that looks perfectly acceptable. I'm 100% certain that the stove is back in working order, and that's both good and bad news. It's good news because I'll be able to stay warm tonight, because although it looks warm now, it is going to get down to around 5 degrees Celsius this night. But it's bad news because I was hoping this was going to be a little bit more involved. When using biodiesel, which I am here aboard Refleks, it is not uncommon for the regulator to gum up after a few years of service, and then you need to take apart the regulator and clean that. And I thought that was the issue here, because truth be told, this is my second attempt at cleaning the stove, and the first one didn't quite work. So yeah, but as you can see, the regulator is fine, and I'm not going to take it apart just to take it apart. I'll hold off on doing that until it's actually necessary. Good morning, guys. It is Saturday morning. I'm just about to take Yoko for a walk and then I'm going to head over to Athena. But there's something I want to show you first. The astute amongst you might have noticed that the scenery has changed a little bit, and that's because I've moved Obelix to her summer slip. Every winter, us liveaboards here in the marina huddle together on one pontoon, so it's normal for me to change slips a couple of times a year. But this year, there is another reason. And that reason are these new spiffy pontoons costing roughly $1 million. You might be wondering why I included that little story about the new pontoons in the marina, and it's simply just because it's kind of related to what I'm doing here aboard Athena. As I mentioned in my last video, I would really prefer to have Athena moved into one of the surrounding sheds before I get started on all of the big jobs I've got planned this summer. Because of the pontoon replacement, most of the boats are still up under hard, and that includes the ones in the sheds, meaning I can't get in there and get started on my to-do list for this summer. And that is really frustrating, especially because of these videos. I want to show you guys some of all of this stuff, but I just can't right now. For instance, today I'm stuck doing some prep work for the new through hulls, which is not that terribly interesting. At least not in my opinion. As you can see, a part of this task is to figure out the plumbing here aboard Athena, and I've got that sorted, but I think that's going to be its own dedicated video. So today, what we're going to be doing is a bunch of grinding. The reason I needed to figure out the plumbing was so that I'd know how many through hulls I would need here aboard Athena. And it turns out the old holes are all wrong, both in size, in number, and in location. There are some of the holes from the old through hulls I'll be able to reuse if I simply just enlarge them a little bit. Let's take a look here underneath the forward head. Behind this little access hatch here, there are 3 holes. And I only need one of those, and that's going to be the top one up there, so I can go ahead and glass over the 2 other ones. How come I only need one through hull for the forward head? Well, because the forward head is going to flush with fresh water. Now, before anybody gets their panties all up in a bunch down in the comment section, there are good reasons for having a head that flushes with fresh water if you've got fresh water to spare, but we'll get back to that in the plumbing video. As you can see, spaces add a little bit of a premium in here, and no matter where I put this through hull, I don't think I can have a through hull in here without using one of these 90-degree bends on there. I would really like to avoid that, but I just don't think I can. Now, if you guys have any kind of suggestions, just go ahead and leave them as a comment down below. That was the first of 5 through hulls I'll have here aboard Athena below the waterline. And if we move a little further aft, right around here, we get to the next one. It is hiding right underneath here, and it is the hole for the log. And by log, I mean one of these depth, speed, and temperature sensors. This is the DST-110. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to reuse the hole from the old one. But let's just go ahead and check. Yep. The new one is a little bit bigger than the old one, and that's good news because that means I can potentially just enlarge this hole a little bit and use the new through hull. Moving a little further aft, we get to the area underneath the galley, and that is where the drain from the sink used to be. I glassed that over last summer because I don't need that. Like I've mentioned before, all the sinks and the shower here aboard Athena are going to drain to a separate grey water tank that's then going to be pumped overboard above the waterline. Right above where I'm standing now, there is another through hull that we might potentially be able to reuse. It is right there, and that is the intake for the salt water in the galley. The hole does look a little bit big, but let's just give it a quick test. Yeah, well, that's awesome. I think I can reuse that hole. And that leaves us only with 3 more through hulls for a total of 6. I think I might have said 5 earlier, but it's a total of 6 through hulls. And those 3 are probably going to end up being located right here underneath the companionway steps. Now, I say probably because there are some challenges. I'll need an inlet and an outlet for the manual saltwater head, and I'll also need an inlet that's going to be shared for emergency use for the engine and also for coolant for the future diesel generator. The big challenge here is the amount of space available. Long, very long story short, there are some of the holes left over from the old through hulls that I can go ahead and prep so that once the temperature comes up just a little bit more, it'll be easy for me to lay up some new laminate to close them up. One of the holes I know for sure I can go ahead and prep is the inlet from the old forward head. As you can see, there is a little bit of butyl left over from last summer when I was drying out the hull, so I better get started removing that. I've cleaned up all of the vacuum tape, so now it's just a matter of beveling this edge here so that the new laminate will have something to tie into, and that's going to be a 1:12 bevel. Ideally, that bevel is going to be on both sides of the hull, but I know space is a little bit limited in there, so I'll get started out here and we'll see what happens. Seeing as there are lots of people getting their boats ready, I better use my spiffy new vacuum. That looks about right. I'm gonna hold off on doing the inside bevel until I've taken care of the rest of the outside stuff. I think the easiest way to get rid of this old plastic through hull is just to grind it into oblivion. And there we go. I'm done beveling holes on the outside of the hull, but heading back up, I noticed that I still haven't sanded the back of the skeg. Seeing as I've already got my vacuum down here and my grinder, I might as well take care of that now. That is going to be one fine looking skeg later this summer. Good morning, guys. It is Sunday morning. Yesterday I mentioned that there is a little bit of a space issue with cramming a bunch of seacocks into the compartment below the companionway steps. 40,000 brains works better than one, so I've decided to hold off on beveling the outside of the holes from the old through hulls until I've had a chance to see what the great hive mind can come up with. As you can see, I won't be able to fit one of these composite through hulls in here, and that is a little bit of a pain. According to the manufacturer, it is possible to change the configuration of this so that you have a 90-degree bend on the inlet side of this valve, meaning the through hull would connect to here. That I do have room for, but I don't know if I like this solution. Let's pretend this thing is now mounted to the hull so that the through hull is down here. If this is going to clog anywhere, I assume it's going to clog here in the 90-degree fitting. And servicing that while in the water is going to be a real pain because there's no way to shut off the water before this 90-degree fitting. The other concern I've got is the fact that these are going to be mounted directly below the companionway steps. So say I'm messing around down here with something and I forgot to put the hatch back on top, and someone is coming down into the boat and accidentally steps on one of these. I don't think they're going to survive that. Through Design specifically came up with this load-bearing collar to comply with ABYC standards that state that a seacock should be able to carry 500 pounds of, I think it's static load on the end of it without breaking or deforming. But as you can see, this fits onto the valve itself. It does not fit onto the 90-degree fitting, so this load-bearing collar doesn't really help me if I use the 90-degree fitting. One solution would be to use the type of seacocks that were originally used here aboard Athena. Those have a lower profile and would easily fit in that compartment. Sadly, I don't have any of the old seacocks laying around because they were badly corroded when I removed them. But they're called Blakes. They have a pretty good reputation, but they're somewhat expensive at $250 a pop, and also they're made out of metal, so they are going to corrode at some point. I'm sure someone is going to comment saying, why don't you just put the through hull somewhere else? And while that is certainly an option, I think that spot down there is the best spot for them. I know some Warrior 38s have their through hulls located underneath the sink here in the aft head, but here aboard Athena, that sink and this bulkhead here are magically going to disappear sometime next winter because I'm going to change the layout here a bit. So I think the spot here underneath the companionway steps is the best spot for them. Like I said, 40,000 brains works better than one, so what do you guys think I should do? Should I go with the original type seacocks that were used here aboard Athena, the Blake ones? Or perhaps there is some kind of composite alternative out there that I'm not familiar with? If you've got any kind of suggestion, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I am riding the struggle bus here, guys. I've got a lot of stuff on my to-do list, but I can't dig into any of it until I've got either the diesel tank here or until I've been moved into a shed. Now, I've got a strong lead on a shed, but I don't know when I'll be able to be moved in there. And also the diesel tank is being built as we speak, so that's good. This is a frustrating time because, like I said, I would like to get started on that to-do list, and also want to put out good videos for you guys. But for me to be able to put out good videos, I need something to do other than just puttering around taking care of prep work. But I think I might have a good idea for next weekend's video. Now, if I can get my hands on a gel plane, I could start removing some of the bad fiberglass on the aft section of the hull. I think that would make for a fun video. I'm sorry for just yammering on in this video. Please bear with me, guys. The epic summer of refit fun is just around the corner, and I'm very excited about that, and I hope you guys are too. As far as the rest of this weekend, well, I think I'm just gonna throw in the towel and go sailing. Surprising, yes, I know, but I think that's what I'm gonna do. So that is gonna be it for this video. I hope to see you guys next weekend, and as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!